and welcome to Highway. Tonight we begin a special Christmas journey in an historic school chapel sheltered from the winter gales by the lovely South Downs of Sussex. And we have our own Christmas present too, because tonight Highway celebrates its 300th edition. So how better, after visiting so many beautiful churches and chapels throughout Britain over the years, than by singing a carol which I'm sure everyone will be singing this Christmas.
O come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. O come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord.
In these last few days before Christmas, the church is coming to the end of Advent, a time of expectation and waiting. Amidst the bustle of Christmas shopping, Christians try and leave time for meditation. The choir of Hurstpierpoint College take us into the peaceful surroundings of their chapel as they sing an Advent hymn. The shared light of the tiny candle each one carries is a reminder of the baby Jesus, born in a stable in Bethlehem, whose time on earth was to leave such a mark on mankind.
Come, thou Redeemer of the earth, and manifest thy virgin birth. Let every age adoring fall, such birth befits the God of all. Forth from his chamber goeth he, that royal home of purity, adjunct into full substance one, rejoicing now his course to run.
Thy cradle here shall glitter bright, and darkness flee thy light. Where endless face shall shine serene, and twilight never intervene. O Lord, eternal Son, to thee whose advent sets thy people free, whom with the Father we adore, and Holy Ghost
I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore.
That was the 121st Psalm, chosen for us by Colin Bowman Edmonds and read here in the chapel at Hurstpierpoint College. You'll notice that Colin shows some verses from the Bible in which personal courage is wholly sustained by faith in God. Tonight we shall be meeting some very courageous people who share a burden cheerfully and successfully and for whom faith can be especially important. Colin is a St. Dunstaner, one of more than 1,000 men and women around the world who have lost their sight while serving their country. Out of the tragedies of war and terrorism, St. Dunstaners have had to face up to the challenge of returning to everyday life without the sight that the rest of us take so much for granted. Colin, it's very nice to meet you.
Well, it's delightful to be here, Sir Harry.
Now, as president of St. Dunstans,
Yes.
you can take up the story from there.
Yes, we try and catch the spirit of our founder, Sir Arthur Pearson, who was a dynamic person. And there's all sorts of things going on at Ian Fraser House. I mean, this weekend they're playing bridge, but last week we had an archery week.
Archery?
Yes, even blind people manage to play archery. And then there's the more professional type, like the remedial therapy and the physiotherapists. And of course, this year, being our 75th anniversary, our Radio Amateurs Club have done a special period with their shack up at the top of Ian Fraser House.
Ted John, isn't it?
Ted John, yes, and we have a special call card, GB75STD, so that anybody who picks up our calls all over the world will know of the St. Dunstans 75th anniversary.
Thank you very much. Nice seeing you.
It's been delightful. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Colin.
much.
I'm off to Ian Fraser House now.
Well, I hope you enjoy it there.
I'm sure I will.
That's fun.
Thank you. But we'll be back later in the programme, where I'll be joined by the choir at Hurstpierpoint and the whole school as we together celebrate the coming of Christmas. As with so many of the 300 editions of Highway, we're setting off on a journey. Today, to the wintry Sussex countryside, where there are signs that Christmas is almost upon us. On the way to the St. Dunstans HQ near Brighton, the Highway caravan has to climb up over Ditchling Beacon, from where a superb landscape comes into view. Before we get to St. Dunstans, I'll be meeting up with a blind landscape painter who took part in a previous Highway programme, Caroline James. This really is a remarkable story. Caroline was registered blind in 1964, but it wasn't until she went completely blind 10 years ago that she found out that she could paint. Today, she's completing a Christmas painting for Highway. Tell me, how do you paint? Show us how you paint.
It's very difficult to explain, Harry, but I paint in layers. I don't paint like normal people do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just not normal.
Come along.
And usually I paint in layers. And I have to start off with a horizon line along there and just tear a tiny little bit. And then in my mind, I've got all the bushes along here, around the bottom, and going up into the overhanging trees, and all the clouds in the background, and the little birds. Must have little birds in there. If I want to do like a horizon line,
Yeah.
you know, I literally fill it along with my fingers. But that's not straight. I can never do a straight line.
Never mind.
Never do a straight line, and then you fill it all in.
Yeah.
And
You can see
make full
colours in
water.
your mind, because you were sighted when you were a child, weren't you?
Yes, and you know, that's weird because if I can conjure up a picture, I copy it from my sort of third eye onto the paper, and yet I cannot dream in pictures. I don't dream in pictures.
Don't you?
No, and I find that a sort of interesting kind of phenomenon.
Now, I'm just about to sing one of your songs. Tell us about it.
Well, Harry, I care very much about people and about this earth that we live in. And quite honestly, I think we're making a right mess of a planet. And if we're not very careful, we're going to do irreparable damage to our own environment. And my voice might only be just a very small voice, but if there's enough small voices, perhaps somebody will pay attention, and our children and our children's children will still have a wonderful place to live in.
Take care of the flowers that bloom all year on the hillsides where the honeybees stray. Look after God's creatures without asking why, taking care as you go on your way. For this is the land that tomorrow brings. This is the land full of beautiful things. This is the land where birds delight to sing, and this is the land we must love. Take care of the swallows now that autumn's come, and the summertime has faded at last. Wish them well as they fly on their long journey home, till the cold dark of winter is past. For this is the land that tomorrow brings. This is the land full of beautiful things. This is the land where birds delight to sing, and this is the land we must love.
It has become the aim of St. Dunstans to open the eyes of the world to all that blinded folk can accomplish. So wrote Sir Arthur Pearson, a distinguished journalist who himself went blind. As the founder in 1915, it is to him that St. Dunstans owes its inspiration. The haunting images of men blinded in the German gas attacks in the First World War, images which Arthur Pearson himself was never able to see, moved the public and led to the setting up of a hostel where young soldiers could retrain and get a new chance to earn their living. Soon the work was concentrated on a huge house with spacious grounds in London's Regent's Park. The garden there was dominated by a great clock, formerly at St. Dunstan's Church, Fleet Street. So by popular acclaim, everyone who went there for retraining quickly became known as a St. Dunstaner. Today the clock is restored to Fleet Street and St. Dunstan's has moved on too. Its principal base, just as spacious and impressive as the original headquarters, is Ian Fraser House, here at Ovingdean, overlooking the English Channel and not far from Brighton. Ian Fraser was chairman of St. Dunstan's for over 50 years, putting on a secure and permanent footing the work that began in the Great War. This is the hub of all that St. Dunstan's stands for, and men and women come here from all over the world to learn the new skills which St. Dunstan's has pioneered for the visually handicapped. The present chairman of St. Dunstan's is Admiral of the Fleet, Sir Henry Leach. Nice to meet you, Sir Henry.
Welcome, Sir Harry, to Ian Fraser House.
Thank you. Now, the work of St. Dunstan's is still important today, isn't it?
Yes, it is very. We operate, as you know, on two fundamentals. The first is that of the pursuit of independence and normality, by which I mean that once we have rehabilitated, trained a person into how to live with his recent loss of sight, we then ease him into the harsh outside world, having, where age and circumstances permit, trained him for a specific job. And that leads on to the second fundamental, which is care. And that is why I think the right descriptive phrase for St. Dunstan's is when one refers to it as the family. Relationships are very close and very personal.
That's great, isn't it? Now, who comes here now?
Well, surprisingly, although we get, and thank God we only do get, a trickle from, for example, Northern Ireland, but other things could occur at any time, We take in something like 2 to 3 dozen, probably World War II, probably ex-prisoners of war, annually.
What kind of training do the men and women get here?
Well, the first essential thing, of course, is mobility. And it is basically, rehabilitation is the all-embracive word, how to live as a blind man, to which, of course, you have not been accustomed.
So how do you see the future of St Dunstans?
Well, the future, I think, is definite in an indefinite way. It'll go on, I think, forever. I mean, we will see our people through, and there will be other people coming in. So we've got to be absolutely on the spot and ready to train at a minute's notice here.
So if you just put your hand forward and just fill that hole there.
And here's a good example of the help provided at Ian Fraser House for new St Dunstaners. Jerry Duncan is introducing Lionel Scott to the layout of the buildings using a beautiful scale model.
And just about here is where you take typing, where you've been taking your typing lessons. Okay?
That's
So
good.
you get that
Janice
into
in there,
some
All right, George? Yes. Good.
As we've heard, all the work here at the Ian Fraser House is devoted to helping St Dunstaners get back into everyday life. And that's what's about to happen for Martin McCrory, who's been training to be a sports and remedial therapist and is now opening up his own studio in Brighton.
So it combines both the sort of getting in with your ordinary physiotherapy work, plus using the relaxation, remedial therapy on the patient as well, in order to get them really relaxed so you can work on them. And it actually helps their own body's mechanism heal themselves.
Now, you know all about stress because 14 years ago you were involved in an explosion in Northern Ireland. How did you feel when you became blind?
My very first thought was, gosh, that's it. That's the end of the world for me. But I thought about it, and I was always brought up believing in God, and I thought, well, I'm going to pray, I'm going to ask for help, which I did do. And as soon as I'd done that, there was this tremendous feeling of warmth come into me, and I knew it was going to be all right. And sort of from then on, I knew that I could go out and I could live a normal life again. So then I thought, well, how am I going to do this? So I lay thinking about it, and I thought, well, I've always been a very keen sportsman. I always liked learning new sports, so I thought, well, it's just like a sport, really. Yeah. I thought, if I practice at it, I'm going to get better at it, so it's going to be a challenge. It's something to go for, and once I got good at it, well, I wanted to be better. I didn't want to just sort of reach there. I wanted to be the best sort of thing, so I sort of laid myself a challenge down, really.
This is something I want to find out about. Tom, where'd you learn to shoot?
Oh, about 6 months ago with the club here.
Yeah?
Well, this club was the first archery club to be formed in the world, blank.
But how on earth do you manage to shoot at the target?
Well, the only guide you're allowed to have through the rules, which we comply with the rules for sighted people as well, is that we have a camera stand here, which has got this little aperture on, and you rest your hand up against there like that. And that's the only guide. You can't rest your hand on anything. That's the only guide. And then the spotter, your coach, will line you up with the target. You're allowed to fire 6 arrows for spotting, which on sighted people as well. They do it the same. And then after that, you're on your own.
In 1956, Chester Haston, an American, wrote a Christmas song based on an old Negro spiritual, Mary's Boy Child. And with me is the lovely Dana to sing it.
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
What are you doing over Christmas?
Well, I just opened in pantomime last night up in Oxford.
Oh, great.
Snow Whiting.
Snow Whiting again?
Yes, Snow Whiting.
I could do one of the dwarfs, couldn't I? So what about the children?
Oh, they're all there. They're all there, yeah. We're going to have a really traditional Christmas.
Yeah?
Up on Christmas morning about 5 o'clock to get the toys. And then church and then big lunch.
Yeah. Are you cooking it?
Oh, well, I shall eat it.
And you and the kids will eat it?
We'll all eat it,
Oh,
yeah.
great. And you've got a Christmas present for us, haven't you?
Well, yes, I hope so. I'm going to sing Mary's Boy Child.
Lovely.
Long time ago in Bethlehem, so the Holy Bible said, Mary's boy child, Jesus Christ, was born on Christmas Day. Hark now, hear the angels sing, listen to what they say, that man will live that man will live forevermore because of Christmas Day. While shepherds watch their flocks by night, they see a bright new shining star. They hear a choir sing, the music seemed to come from afar. Long time ago in Bethlehem, so the Holy Bible say, Mary's boy child Jesus Christ was born on Christmas Day. Hark now, hear the angels sing, listen to what they say, that man will live forevermore because of Christmas Day. Hark now, hear the angels sing, listen to what they say, that man will live forevermore because of Christmas Day.
Sierra Tango Delta QRZ QRZ.
This year, St Dunstans is 75 years old, and a very special group of St Dunstaners who hail from the Radio Society have been broadcasting messages all around the world. They have their own call sign, GB75STD, and have contacted operators all over the world, including Russia, Hong Kong, Bahrain and New Zealand. Ted John is the secretary of the Society. Ted, when did the Radio Society begin?
Well, the group of St Dunstans who were licensed used to get together about once a year. Yeah. And then we found we had so many that it might have been a good idea to join together as a society, which was formed in 1976.
So how many operators are there?
The number of operators we have now is about 23. On the net we may get 10 involved in the net from all up and down the country, from south right up to Scotland. And when I'm at home from Wallasey, of course, but yes, it's a good thing. We keep in touch, and of course, no two blind people are the same. No. So therefore, the way I do something might not necessarily be good for somebody else, but at least in keeping in contact, we're learning how to get over things.
Yeah. So what part does the Radio Society play at Christmas time?
A lot of chaps who've been speaking to each other throughout the year, they make a point of going on Christmas morning. Not always the ideal time, of course, if you've got a house full, but people they speak to during the year, they just sort of get on the air and say Happy Christmas and how's the wife, or the XYL as we call it in radio language. Well, whilst you're here, shall we try and contact somebody from abroad?
Great.
GB75 Sierra Tango Delta. Hello CQ, hello CQ. Hello CQ, hello
Dances and concert parties have always been a tradition for St Dunstaners. Bill Griffiths, who's singing here, lost his sight as a prisoner of war in Japan during the Second World War. He began his singing career after his marriage to Alice. They've recently represented St Dunstans in a tour of America and Australia.
But I wonder if we'll remember when we were two little boys.
We've heard how St Dunstaners retrain for work independently alongside sighted men and women. And now we're off to the county town of Lewis to meet a St Dunstaner who's likely to be on vital duty throughout the Christmas holiday.
Good afternoon, Sussex Police. Can I help you?
Des Chandler was blinded whilst the National Service in Rhodesia. Was brought to the Ian Fraser House in 1978. Thanks to the training he received at St Dunstans and some technical wizardry, he managed the busy switchboard at the Sussex Police headquarters. Des, how did you cope when you first realised you'd lost your sight?
Coming out of hospital and going into St Dunstans and actually having to train straight from hospital was, I think, the best thing for me, because I didn't have time to dwell on my predicament that I was in. And of course, meeting people in St Dunstans, one day I was sitting in the chair And this guy came up to me and he said, you know, I believe you're from Rhodesia, what have you. And he said, you know, I've lost my eyesight. And he said, come here. And he put out his hands and he said, feel there. And he had lost both his hands as well. So he said, well, do you see me moping around here? So I said, no, I don't. So he said, well, go on, get on with life, you know.
Now, I know you're married with a young family which you've never seen. So, do you find that frustrating at all?
A lot of people ask me, isn't it frustrating that you haven't seen your kids and your wife? And I say no, because I believe my motto is, seeing is believing, but feeling is gospel. And when you've got a saying like that, it really is, you develop your other senses. And I've been blind 12 years, and I enjoy my way of life now. I've got a super job, a lovely wife, super kids. What else can a man ask for in life?
Quite well, Fred.
It's lovely tea.
Beautiful.
As we've seen, St Dunstans are spread all over the world. Just a few dozen, however, share a home here in Brighton at Pearson House. Here live some of the most senior St Dunstans, men like Fred Hobbs from the Royal Engineers, who lost his sight in action in France in 1918.
Good afternoon, Fred.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Like his colleagues, Fred values his independence and the chance to make his own preparations for Christmas.
Thank you.
I've been joined in the hall of Pearson House by some of the choristers you saw earlier from Hurstpierpoint College and the boys and girls of Southover Primary School. Together, we're going to sing a lovely new arrangement of Away in the Manger. We're coming to the end of the first part of our Christmas highway, but don't go away, because we've all been invited back to the lovely chapel at Hurstpierpoint College. Some of the St Dunstans are already arriving to join in the singing of traditional carols. As soon as we're all together, I shall be joining the school choir as by candlelight we sing a gentle new carol by John Rutter.
In the
nations proclaim him their Lord and their Savior.
But Mary will hold him and sing him to sleep.
Candlelight, angel light, firelight and star glow, shine on his cradle till breaking of dawn. Gloria, Gloria, in excelsis Deo. Christ our Redeemer, asleep in the hay, Godhead incarnate and full of salvation. Candlelight, angel light, firelight and star glow, shine on his cradle till breaking of dawn. Gloria, Gloria, in excelsis Deo. Angels are singing, the Christ child is born.
With a lovely Candlelight Carol by John Rutter, we begin the second part of this Christmas highway. And the two stories we've been following tonight are coming together too. The St. Dunstans, who've been telling us about the celebration marking 75 years of vital work, retraining blinded servicemen and women, have joined the choir of Hurstpierpoint College here in this chapel, as together we retell in words and music the wonderful story of the first Christmas. But before we go on, there's one St. Dunstans I know who has a particular love of music, Gwen Auburn. Gwen, at one time in your life, you wanted to be a professional singer, is that right?
Yes, I did, Harry. Yeah, and then I got married. But before carrying on with the professional singing, of course, I was married 11 months and 4 days when I had this accident.
And you became blind then?
I had to go to an ammunition factory, the Royal Ordnance Factory in Bridgend.
Yeah.
And there was an horrific explosion. So I was blinded and lost my hands. But it was rather horrific at the time.
Must have been, yes.
You know.
Did you feel bitter at all?
Well, I can't, no. I couldn't tell you the truth that I was bitter, because I didn't really think of myself as being as blind. But one thing I think in life, without my faith, although I love fun, without my faith, I just could not cope.
Very important to you.
Oh, it's very important, because I think God makes one's shoulders wide enough for them to bear their grief and their troubles.
Headmaster, singing is an important part of the Hurstpierpoint tradition, isn't it?
It always has been from the very foundation of the school, and every Sunday our chapel service is built round the singing of the choir. We have a number of achievements to our name, particularly the winning of the ITV competition for school choirs a few years back. I have with me a former member of the school who's very much part of this tradition. I'd like to introduce him to you. He's Mr. Paul Reardon-Ever.
Hello, sir.
Nice to meet you, Paul.
Nice to meet you.
Paul is an eye surgeon, is now working in London.
Paul, why did you decide to become an eye surgeon?
Well, it began with a fascination of the eye and the way it works and the beauty of it and how we see. And then as I trained as a doctor, I realised that the joy of ophthalmology and being an eye surgeon is you spend so much time improving people's quality of life.
Now, when you were here as a lad, was the chapel important to you?
Yes, it was. It was very important. Yeah. To me, the chapel really was the embodiment of the community spirit in this college, and I spent a lot of time in the chapel. I experienced Christian faith at that time, and I still adhere strongly to that. And I think it exposed a lot of other people to the same thing, and they may not have taken it away as a firm package, but at least they were experienced. I think it taught them a great deal.
And one thing I want to ask you, there's a very unusual tradition involved with the choir, isn't there?
Yes, there is. As each year we have the Boar's Head procession, in which a Boar's Head is processed through the cloisters to the accompaniment of the Boar's Head carol.
The Boar's Head Carol, one of the most dramatic traditions which mark the passing of the seasons here at Hurstpierpoint. Now here's an interesting fact. That carol is one of the oldest surviving carols and dates from the 14th century. Now there's one tradition I'm sure we all appreciate at Christmas time, the chance to sit by a blazing log fire and hear a Christmas poem. Well, you need wait no longer. Here's Keith Barron to read Christmas by Sir John Betjeman.
The bells of waiting Advent ring, the tortoise stove is lit again, and lamp oil light across the night has caught the streaks of winter rain. In many a stained glass window sheen, from Crimson Lake to Hooker's Green. The holly in the windy hedge, and round the manor house the yew, will soon be stripped to deck the ledge, the altar, font and arch and pew, so that the villagers can say, the church looks nice on Christmas Day. Provincial public houses blaze, and corporation tramcars clang. On lighted tenements I gaze, where paper decorations hang. And bunting in the red town hall says, Merry Christmas to you all. And London shops on Christmas Eve are strung with silver bells and flowers, as hurrying clerks the city leave to pigeon-haunted classic towers, and marble clouds go scudding by the many-steepled London sky. And is it true, and is it true, this most tremendous tale of all, seen in a stained glass window's hue, a baby in an ox's stall, the maker of the stars and sea, become a child on earth for me? And is it true? For if it is, no loving fingers tying strings around those tissued fripperies, the sweet and silly Christmas things, bath salts and inexpensive scent, and hideous tie so kindly meant. No love that in a family dwells, no carolling in frosty air, nor all the steeple-shaking bells can with this single truth compare, that God was man in Palestine and lives today in bread and wine.
Now, I wonder if you remember Highway's visit to Jarrow, when I met Bishop Michael Ball. Recognise him? Well, we could be forgiven for our mistake, because I'm now joined by Bishop Michael's twin brother, Peter, who is the Bishop of Lewis. Now, I know you're going to read first the Gospel account of the birth of Jesus, but any thoughts, now that Christmas coming around again, any thoughts for Christmas?
Well, I suppose all of our thoughts are about peace, aren't they, with the Gulf situation so critical. And I think there are two things, marvellous things, that first of all, there's no peace if there's resentment or unforgiveness in people's hearts. And so our Lord, though we had destroyed his world, he came in total forgiveness. And I think the second thing is there's no peace if people are seeking for power. So he came as a helpless child, and that's beautiful. This is a reading from the Gospel according to St. Luke, chapter 2, beginning at verse 8. And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Saviour, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying,
Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men.
Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy kind, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With the angelic host proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King.
Well, that special setting of what's been described as the most famous hymn in the world brings us to the end of our Christmas highway. Of course, the festivities will continue here at Hurstpierpoint, throughout Britain and all over the world, for the St Dunstans whose story of courage has helped to make this such a special 300th highway.
And we wish all our expatriates over in the UK a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Their messages sent by their own amateur radio station, the greetings of everyone at Pearson House, and here at Hurstpierpoint College, all come together as we see Catalin James's Christmas card for Highway, so that we can all wish each other a very happy Christmas. Have a happy Christmas, and don't forget our 301st Highway, our New Year edition, which comes from lovely Teesdale. I'll see you then.